All right, so today we're going way back to like 1830, and we're going to be looking at this really, really interesting document
Mm-hmm.
that basically gives us like a window into what early Mormonism was like.
Right.
And, obviously most of you listening are familiar with the story of Joseph Smith,
Yeah.
the founder of the Church of Jesus Christ.
Right.
And, he's just coming off of his claimed revelations and the writing of the Book of Mormon.
Mm-hmm.
And so this document is basically a commandment.
Yeah.
It's directed at him and Oliver Cowdery,
Right.
another really important figure in the early church.
Yeah, one of the witnesses of the Book of Mormon.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this document is so fascinating because it's not just like,
Mm-hmm.
theological pronouncements or, high-level ideas.
Right.
It really is like a divine instruction manual.
Oh, wow.
It's like
So interesting.
it blends spiritual guidance with like really specific directives for building their movement and establishing the church.
Okay.
So, let's jump into some of these instructions. The document really emphasizes like the importance of Zion.
Right.
And Zion isn't just a place, right?
Yeah, well, that's a great point to bring up.
Yeah.
Zion is, this idealized community,
Yeah.
a holy city that, they're striving to build.
Okay.
So it's more of a concept than...
It's like symbolic, right?
Yeah, it's symbolic of like gathering
Yeah.
unity and separation from, the world
Right. Yeah. So like,
that opposed them at the time.
especially in that historical context, right?
Right.
They're facing challenges. They're trying to launch this new
Yeah.
religious movement.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of skepticism.
Absolutely.
There's even hostility.
Yeah. A
So,
lot of opposition.
yeah, how does this document kind of address the practical side
Yeah.
of like
Yeah.
building this community?
Well, I think one thing that's really interesting about this document is that it gets into the nitty-gritty.
Really?
Like, it even goes down to like how Smith and Cowdery should live their lives.
Oh, wow.
So, for example, Smith is told to limit his temporal labors,
Okay.
which means, everyday work.
Okay.
And he's supposed to focus solely on the Book of Mormon, on preaching
Wow.
and establishing the church.
Okay.
And, the document basically assures him that the church will provide
Right.
for his material needs.
That's a big leap of faith,
It really is.
to just be like, okay, I'm going to quit my job
Right.
and
Drop everything.
yeah, and just trust that the community is
Mhm.
going to support me.
And that's a theme that comes up again and again in the document, this
Uh-huh.
like reliance on the community and on divine providence.
Yeah.
It even tells them to like travel without a purse
Wow.
or extra clothes.
That's intense.
Like, it's a powerful symbol
Yeah.
of their dependence on faith.
Okay, so let's talk about Cowdery.
Okay.
The document gives him some very specific instructions
Yeah.
about how he should operate.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, it says that he should preach,
Okay.
as with the voice of a trump.
Right.
Yeah, what do you think is most significant about the instructions given to Cowdery?
Well, I think the voice of a trump is such a powerful image. It's
Mhm.
like evokes this idea of,
Like a herald,
yeah, like a herald.
announcing something really important.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, it suggests that, Cowdery's role
Yeah.
is not just to teach, but to like boldly proclaim this message
Right.
to the world.
Now, you mentioned earlier that this document wasn't just about practical instructions.
Mm-hmm.
It also had like these spiritual pronouncements.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets into some pretty like intense themes
Yeah.
of judgment and divine retribution. In fact, it actually gives instructions
Oh, wow.
on smiting those who oppose them.
Yeah.
And this is something that I think is worth unpacking a little
Yeah.
bit. This focus on judgment is pretty intense.
It's a heavy topic.
Yeah, it's a heavy topic.
Yeah.
So what do you make of this emphasis on smiting and retribution?
Okay, so I think it's important to remember
Yeah.
that they were living in a time of like, religious fervor,
Right.
and they often faced persecution.
They weren't exactly welcomed with open arms.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so these pronouncements, you could see them as a way of
Good.
asserting their authority
Yeah.
and deterring opposition.
Like a strong warning.
Yeah, kind of like a,
Right.
don't mess with us.
Right.
But you could also interpret smiting, metaphorically,
Okay. How's that?
as like a way of separating themselves
Okay.
from those who resisted their teachings.
So not literal smiting.
Right. Not necessarily like physical violence, but more like,
Okay.
we're going to create a boundary here
Okay.
between us and those who don't believe.
And that kind of ties into this idea of like pruning the vineyard, which is another phrase that appears in the document.
Yeah, that's another interesting one.
What do you make of that?
Well, pruning the vineyard, That could refer to purifying the church,
Yeah.
removing those who are not true believers.
So like weeding out
Exactly, the non-believer.
the doubters. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that reflects this theme of
Right.
judgment and refining
Yeah.
that's present throughout the whole document.
Right.
But it also, I think, speaks to the
Yes.
challenges of
Yeah.
maintaining unity
Yeah.
and ideological cohesion.
Especially in a brand new movement
Exactly.
that's just getting off the ground.
Yeah, it's hard to keep everybody on the same page.
So they're being told basically to prioritize the spiritual mission and avoid getting bogged down in worldly conflicts.
Right, avoid those distractions.
Navigating those early days must have been really
You can
complicated.
only imagine
The pressure.
the scrutiny. And then you add in, the fact that they believed they were literally laying the foundation for a new religious movement.
Well, and that's reinforced
Yeah.
by the recurring theme throughout this revelation of enduring afflictions and trusting in divine support through trials.
Yeah, it's this constant reminder to persevere, to remain steadfast even in the face of adversity.
It's really a message of resilience, isn't it?
It really is.
This idea that even when things get tough, even when you face opposition and challenges,
Mm.
there's this higher power that's providing strength.
And you see this theme echoed throughout religious history, this idea of divine support in times of trouble.
It seems to speak to a very fundamental human need to believe in something greater than ourselves, especially when we're facing adversity.
Yeah, it gives us hope. It gives us strength.
So if we step back and look at this whole picture, we have Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery at this pivotal moment,
Mm-hmm.
receiving these instructions that would shape their roles, and the entire trajectory of the Latter-day Saint movement and this idea of a 25th commandment. What makes you think about how religious beliefs evolves and are reinterpreted over time?
It really does. It challenges us to think about the nature of revelation, the evolution of belief systems.
It's like we're looking through a window into the very foundation of a Latter-day Saint movement.
Exactly. We see their challenges, the promises that fueled their dedication, and the unwavering faith of its founders.
It really makes you wonder what other revelations or instructions might have been received throughout history that have shaped the course of events.
That's a question worth pondering, isn't it? How many turning points in history might be attributed to moments of profound spiritual conviction or perceived divine guidance?
That's all the time we have for today's deep dive, but thanks for joining us,
It was a pleasure.
and we'll see you next time.